your nation, your province, your southern Alberta. From the heart of Lethbridge, it's Bridge City News Weekend Edition with Jeanette Roche.
Hello, thanks for joining us. Lethbridge Conservative MP Rachel Thomas has spoken out against the Trudeau government's Bill C-11, or as she calls it, the online censorship law. She's taking issue with the fact that the feds will be forcing podcasters to register with the government by November 28th. She's urging Canadians to sign a petition to help protect freedom.
People are paying attention, and Canadians are aware that, in fact, their voices are being censored. A podcast registry. Innovative, hey? Now, when it comes to attacking freedom, this government just can't help itself. They are absolutely committed to censoring what we can see, what we can say, and what we can hear online. Now, why is this government, just curious, so hell-bent on censoring people's freedom of speech?
It's simply false. What the bill doesn't do is regulate users or people that produce podcasts.
Exactly.
What the bill does is make sure that tech giants pay their fair share, such as Apple, Spotify, Netflix. What it does is support our Canadian creators, and what it does is making sure that Canadian stories are heard.
The cold and flu season is fast approaching, and with that comes the potential of a strep throat surge in Alberta this fall. According to pharmacists, trends in 2023 saw strep cases hit a 6-year high. The severity of infections also rose with an increase of invasive group A strep, which is a serious condition that can be fatal. You can wash your hands and wear a mask to help prevent the spread of the virus. Loa Manning, a Lethbridge pharmacist, talks about what the common symptoms of the illness are and when you should seek help from a professional.
Strep throat can cause a sore throat, fever, trouble swallowing, sometimes in young children, even nausea and vomiting. Generally, it is not associated with a cough, so that can kind of help people distinguish, is this a cold, a flu, or am I actually getting strep throat? So your tonsils can be red and swollen. Sometimes they have white patches or streaks of pus, but if that's not there, that doesn't necessarily mean you don't have strep throat. Fever, headache. If you have a sore throat lasting longer than 48 hours, you can definitely come to the pharmacy. We can do a swab for strep and you get the results in about 15 minutes. Some places do walk-in appointments, some you have to make an appointment, so just call the pharmacy.
Manning says if a swab is positive, the pharmacy will prescribe antibiotics to help get rid of strep. The Alberta government has launched a new dashboard reporting stats related to respiratory illnesses. It will report the information on COVID-19, influenza, and RSV. Information provided will include cases, positivity, hospital admissions, ICU admissions, and deaths. The dashboard is set to be updated every Thursday throughout the respiratory season. Alberta Health Services announced that newly recruited international nurses from 15 countries will be arriving in the province soon. Officials say around 70 RNs will help bolster staff at 30 AHS sites in both central and northern Alberta. Those sites include hospitals, community health centers, and long-term care facilities. About 70 nurses are expected to arrive in the next 6 months as they accept job offers and move through immigration. AHS officials say even more will be arriving over the next 2 years. Well, the Alberta government announced a $330 million investment over the next 5 years to help revitalize downtown Calgary. Government officials say the money will help support the Calgary Rivers District and the Event Centre. Last April, the province, the city, and Calgary Exhibition and Stampede signed a memorandum of understanding to invest in infrastructure to support the new Event Centre, which includes a 1,000-seat downtown arena for amateur hockey.
Alberta's investment in the revitalization of the Rivers District will support public amenities and infrastructure in the district, and that includes a new community rink, improvements to public spaces, and importantly, connections to the entertainment district. Of course, any investment in infrastructure is much more than the dollar figure attached to a project. It's more than a building and it's more than a road. It's an investment in making Alberta the best place to live and work and raise a family.
And in addition, the Calgary Flames are getting their new $800 million arena. It's to be built near the Flames' current home, the iconic Saddle Dome, built in 1983, which will be getting the wrecking ball. Only New York's Madison Square Garden, home of the Rangers, is technically older among NHL arenas. However, the Garden underwent a massive renovation and modernization a decade ago. The new stadium is expected to open around 2027. Alberta's Royal Tyrrell Museum has a new dino. It's a 2-meter long skull of a triceratops that was found in 2014 south of Calgary. The museum says its staff members spent more than 6,500 hours preparing the fossil for a display. It's believed to be one of the best preserved and most complete triceratops skulls found in Canada. Wow. Up next, is your privacy being compromised? Well, our next guest says so. More on the other side of the break. Digital ID and digital currency seems likely to become the norm in developed countries in the near future. Some love the convenience this brings, but there are some very real privacy concerns around this technology. Now, world governments are keen on using it. But why? Sharon Polsky is the president of Privacy and Access Council of Canada. She joined Naveen Day to discuss the pros and the cons of digital ID and currency. Take a look.
G20 nations made a decision to work towards implementing the use of global digital ID and digital currency. Why are these governments so keen on this, and what are the benefits?
Well, really, it's like with every new technology. Digital ID, centrally controlled digital currency, they're technologies that offer benefits and risks. But whether something's a benefit or a risk, and to whom, is something that's a matter of perspective. So consumers, I mean, we all benefit already from the convenience that comes with being able to use digital transactions. Your Apple Wallet, sending money by PayPal or Interac, it's everywhere. And we've gotten very used to relying on those conveniences. Credit cards, it's everywhere. And it's so common that people rely on digital to make their purchases that about 7% of Canadians no longer carry cash. That has that's a problem though, because if more people stop using cash, it's easy to spin that as saying nobody uses cash, nobody needs cash, we don't need to have cash, and move it to digital. It's a way of justifying it. It's a problem though, and we'll talk about that. And digital isn't just a convenience for you and me. Companies benefit from using the digital tech, and they've enticed consumers to sign up for things like loyalty programs that track what we buy. So merchants can sell and profit from that information. So
Right.
it fuels an economy based on surveillance. And let's not forget the third leg of this equation is government. They benefit hugely from digital activity, and they're, on one hand, eager to increase international trade, and having single uniform digital currency would eliminate a lot of red tape. We also look at digital identities being touted as essential for everything from avoiding fraud and protecting children, of course, but it also means sharing very sensitive information, typically providing a copy of your government issue photo ID to some company somewhere in the world that, like every company and government, promises to safeguard our information, and they apologize when it's been breached. So we're being told, don't worry, we'll protect it, this is the way it has to be, as if it's a foregone conclusion, an inevitability, and there's no point even questioning it. And it's got some serious ramifications.
I assume that these G20 nations are promising to put protections in place to safeguard against government abuse, but realistically, can citizens really trust these safeguards?
We've been told for decades now, trust us, we have protections in place, we have logical, physical, and administrative protections to protect your information. But when you look behind the curtain, it's like the Great Wizard of Oz, the protections sometimes, often, aren't there. And that's why we've seen everything from governments across Canada last week to the Pentagon to NASA to every major corporation and government getting hit with cyber problems. So for all the assurances, technology is not perfect yet. It's created by imperfect people. It's not tested adequately before it's launched. That's why there's the patches that are released so frequently to fix the problems that are built into systems. So I'm reluctant to be as trusting as we're told we're supposed to be able to be.
Sharon, some of our viewers do want to take action to make a difference in these kinds of matters when it comes to digital ID, digital currencies, artificial intelligence. What are some things that these people can practically do to either prevent the implementation of digital ID and currency or to protect themselves as much as possible from compromising their privacy?
First of all, use cash. It's as simple as that. The other thing is tell our lawmakers at every single level of government what we want and what you don't want. Talk to your local riding association. We're coming into a federal election sooner than later. There's municipal and by-elections. Tell your riding association that digital ID, digital currency, and privacy are important to you. Make it an election issue.
Next, how realistic is the federal government's 2035 target of net zero emissions? Some say not at all. We dive into that after the break. Well, the federal government has a series of policies related to making Canada a net zero emitter of carbon by the year 2035. But a Leger poll shows those policies are not very popular. Also not crazy about the idea is Alberta's United Conservative Party government. I recently spoke with Rebecca Schultz of the UCP, who says the 2035 goal is simply unrealistic. So you were talking about the federal government's net zero 2035 plan there, right? So that's that goal of 100% net zero emitting electricity system that's in 12 years is kind of what that goal is. So now, Rebecca, you were one of the very first ones to jump on this and hold a press conference to announce that Alberta will not be taking part in this plan and that the province has its own plan. So do you want to maybe dive into that a little bit more? Do you think this 2035 deadline is unrealistic?
It is. It's completely unrealistic. It's also unconstitutional for the federal government to dictate to provinces how we meet our own goals and how we develop our resources and how we generate our power. But it's also completely unaffordable. So I've already spoken to that. Like, our concern here is that, I mean, we're here to represent Albertans. Reliability and affordability of our electricity is absolutely top of mind at a time when cost of living and inflation are the top issues for not only Albertans, but Canadians. How can we justify this exceptional cost, when we have a plan around carbon neutrality to get there by 2050 here in Alberta? We have our own plan, and that was released by my former colleague, Minister Sonia Savage, and the Premier just this past spring, saying, look, we care about the environment. We know we can reduce emissions without crippling our economy and driving away jobs. And so we're going to do this in our own way. What we're asking the federal government for is to have a reasonable, common sense discussion about this. The Premier has set up some working groups between the province and the federal government to address these issues. But I think it's frustrating then, as we're working to get these discussions rolling, that we see this first draft of the clean electricity regulations, which doesn't take into account any feedback that we in our province, whether that be government or much of the feedback from industry, has provided. So that's obviously exceptionally problematic, but we're going to continue to stand up for common sense and essentially, make sure that affordability and reliability are kept top of mind, no matter what.
Okay, so you're mentioning the provincial government had that 2050 goal. Was that a goal you already had set in mind before the federal government announced this 2035 goal?
Our industries have long said that, they've been doing exceptional work in reducing emissions. And so industry is doing this for a variety of reasons, investment, competitiveness. And so for us, it was about capturing, okay, what's happening here already? Have we articulated what's going on? And then recognizing that there are a lot of different ways that we can reduce emissions in a variety of industries, not just in our energy industry. Last week we were out at a cement plant with Heidelberg looking at their net zero cement pilot project, which is pretty exciting. So there are a lot of different ways that we can work to reduce emissions. A goal of 2050 is very reasonable. It's aligned with a number of other jurisdictions around the world. And, I just don't think that we can, move to this 2035 arbitrary target with these massive costs to Albertans and Canadians, and especially when the reliability of our system is at risk. So, we'll start those conversations with the federal government, but, we really have to defend affordability and reliability for Albertans.
Okay, now the Alberta government has long fought back legally against federal rules that it doesn't like, and you've also passed the Sovereignty Act. So is there any way that we could see this act come into play here in regards to this net zero emissions?
The first thing Premier has said is, look, we're going to sit at the table and we're going to have these discussions. We need to talk through, and it's not just the clean electricity regulations that are problematic from the federal government. They have also publicly said that they are going to put an oil and gas cap and an emissions cap in place for our energy industry, which would essentially impact production. And again, that's an area of provincial jurisdiction that would have a huge impact on jobs, our economy, on entire municipalities and First Nations communities. That's also not something that we will accept. So those are the types of things that we're going to be discussing with the federal government.
We need to take a quick break, but we'll be right back with an entertaining discussion about growing up in a legendary author's home. Welcome back. If you grew up in Canada and studied Canadian literature in school, you might just remember the legendary author W.O. Mitchell. His novels like Jake and the Kid and Who Has Seen the Wind have contributed to the Canadian literary landscape. I had the opportunity to speak with his son, who has not only followed in his father's literary footsteps, but has also adapted W.O. Mitchell's biography into a play. Here's part of my interview with Ormond Mitchell, where we delve into the world of this remarkable play and gain insights into what it was like growing up with such a prominent literary figure. So, Ormond, can you maybe start off by telling us about the inspiration behind your play called Magic Lies and what audiences can expect from it at the premiere? I guess it already premiered, didn't it?
Yes, it did. On Friday. That's right. Great opening. The guy who plays it is wonderful. The way it started was the last book that my father did was An Evening with W.O. Mitchell. And it was a collection of 31 pieces. My wife and I selected and edited them, worked with him on it, and wrote little intros to each one. And when that came out in 1997, a couple of drama stage people came to us and they wanted to adapt it and do a one-man show and recreate An Evening with W.O. Mitchell in the tradition, for example, of Mark Twain Tonight. And so that's where it got its start, and its finish was at Rosebud with a wonderful opening.
How long does it run at Rosebud through October, right?
It's run from now until October the 21st. There was 31 productions.
Excellent. Okay. And Rosebud Theatre, of course, is so cute, and it's kind of nestled in that little corner of Alberta there. And I think that's the only place it is playing right now, right?
That's right. Yeah.
Okay, interesting. Okay, so your father, W.O. Mitchell, was a renowned Canadian author. So how has his legacy influenced your own creative pursuits, including this play?
Well, he had a major influence on my life. Not an overpowering and smothering one. He was a wonderful teacher. And in fact, he considered himself throughout his life a teacher. He taught in high schools in his early career, and then he taught creative writing programs all over Canada. And he had a major impact on my aesthetic likes and dislikes. I went on to be a university professor and teach English literature. And on a number of courses, I taught some of his books, in fact. So he had a pretty profound impact on me.
W.O. Mitchell is celebrated for his distinctive Canadian voice in literature. So how do you think that his works have contributed to the Canadian literary landscape?
Well, it's really interesting. I think he was the first, if not the first, to put Canadian Prairie and Alberta foothills on the literary map.
Wow.
In fact, when Jake and the Kid, the collection of short stories, came out in 1961, Margaret Lawrence wrote a review, and she was a very excited review about he's writing about us. And she made the point that there were actually gophers in some of these stories, and there were details of the Canadian landscape. And she said, he gave us license to write about ourselves. And I think that was true.
Well, okay, so Who Has Seen the Wind, one of his most famous novels. Are there other notable literary works that have maybe had an impact on Canadian literature and culture?
Yes, I think there are. I think his top three, the novels that will go on, are Who Has Seen the Wind, which has now sold well over 1 million copies just in Canada alone. The other one is a kind of a bookend one. It's called How I Spent My Summer Holidays. And it's almost as if the character Brian, young Brian in Who's Seen the Wind, grew up. He's now an adolescent. And it's a slightly darker book, but it's a very powerful book. And then the other one is The Vanishing Point. And The Vanishing Point is particularly relevant today because it is about his experience. It's built on his experience with the Stoney Nakoda at the Eden Valley Reserve. He taught out there for a year in the early 50s, and he wrote this novel about red and white relationships.
If you wish to see any of the full-length interviews that we've shown you today, you can head on over to our YouTube page or our website, bridgecitynews.ca, at the bottom of the screen there, or you can scan that QR code. That will also take you to the website. After the break, there's a record-breaking number of international post-secondary students. That is next. Welcome back. Officials with the University of Lethbridge say they have the highest number of international students who are attending classes at the post-secondary school to date. This fall, the school welcomed 1,228 new students both to the Calgary and Lethbridge campus. Speaking to students who may have fled from the war in Ukraine, Paul Penn, the executive director of the International Department at the university, says there have been many from Ukraine who have been relocated to Lethbridge.
We know that they're actually going to the high school, through the high school systems. So we might see them at a later date. Currently, we do have some Ukrainian students that are here. Thank goodness for our President's Executive Council last year. They made a decision that the Ukrainian students that are coming, that's flooding the war, we were fortunate enough to provide tuition as a way to help them fund their education. We're one of the few universities in Canada that is doing that.
There are students who have come from around 90 different countries all over the world. The YWCA Lethbridge and District has partnered with Shoppers Foundation for Women's Health for an initiative that helps to support various shelters across the province. All donations can be collected at any Shoppers Drug Mart or by going online, and the money raised will go towards supporting the YWCA's Harbour House services and its clients in Lethbridge.
2 out of 5 women will experience domestic violence in their lifetime. It could be your friends, your family, your co-workers. So money like this just allows us to increase advocacy. It allows us for increased access to care, so that, maybe there's a possibility there's more access to our types of services for women that are in need of those services, as opposed to women and children alike not being able to access those services because there just isn't enough, or there isn't enough funding there for them to be supported.
The initiative is running until October the 6th. And nothing says fall like the city's fall leaf collection program, which, by the way, kicked off Tuesday. Until November 10th, residents are able to call 311 to have their leaves be picked up. They must be in a paper yard waste bag and be placed in the same spot as waste collection bins are on collection day.
Fall leaf program really allows residents, especially in those areas with that, overhang, that foliage, to really get rid of those additional items that they can't handle in the green cart program. We have certain residents that will give us 45, 50 bags of yard waste material in a single collection. So there is a real need for this program during the October and November period.
There's no cap on the number of bags residents can request to have picked up. The bags must not be heavier than 25 pounds. Well, Riding on Stone Provincial Park is a beautiful natural landscape that you can visit just over an hour away from Lethbridge. It features incredible rock carvings that date back thousands of years. BCN's Micah Quinn heard from experts on the history of this amazing World Heritage Site near Milk River, Alberta.
The historic park was declared a UNESCO World Heritage Site back in 2019 and holds a special place in the hearts of many Blackfoot people in southern Alberta.
Every time I go there, it doesn't matter native, non-native, young, old, I give them tobacco and we offer to the ground after we pray with it out of respect for the people from the past, from people that have gone before us, because I've gone there with a lot of elders, so I've used a lot of their interpretation and the stories behind them. I've tried to mentally collect all those.
Two of the main attractions at Riding on Stone Provincial Park are the petroglyphs and the pictographs.
When we talk about petroglyphs, those are the work, the imprints done with either a sharp bone, antler. The more simplistic the design, the harder to interpret. The pictographs are the ones that are done with red ochre, that are drawn with the red ochre, and that is called the pictographs, the design. And both of them are lasting the weather elements, And so those are to stay forever.
Staff at the site told us there's a huge range in the age of the markings.
Some of the oldest pictures date to approximately 2,000 years old, whereas the most recent picture that we are aware of is 99 years old, coming up on its 100th anniversary next year.
The only thing I ask people that are visiting right now, respect them. Do not touch them. Do not put your name on them. Do not scratch anything.
For Bridge City News, I'm Micah Quinn.
Up next, it's no secret that everyone seems to be feeling the pinch these days as it's costing more just to get by. After the break, an Alberta MP sits down with Hal Roberts to discuss Canada's rising cost of living. We'll be right back.